Hello guys, it's the Unclear 9999. Today's video is about when a person finds themselves always in distress. The feeling can be overwhelming, suffocating, and relentless, as though life itself has turned into an endless cycle of pressure, anxiety, and exhaustion. But the truth is that no matter how permanent distress may seem, there are ways to face it, manage it, and slowly create a path toward peace. Distress often feels like a storm with no shelter, a constant weight pressing down on the chest, stealing air, stealing clarity, and convincing the mind that this state is permanent. But distress is not permanent. It is a state of the mind and body responding to situations that feel larger than what one can handle. The first and most important thing to do is acknowledge it openly, because pretending it doesn't exist only makes it grow stronger in silence. To name distress is to start disarming it. To say I am in distress is not weakness, but awareness, and awareness is the first step to change. Once you recognize the distress, the next step is to understand its roots, because distress is never random. It comes from specific triggers, whether financial struggles, strained relationships, lack of purpose, constant comparison to others, or the heavy load of unprocessed trauma and memories. Understanding the roots does not make distress disappear overnight, but it takes the confusion out of the pain. You stop blaming yourself for just being broken and begin to see that your distress has causes, and if it has causes, it can be managed. From there, you need to break distress down into smaller, manageable pieces instead of trying to solve everything at once. Ask yourself, what exactly can I control right now? Even if it's small, maybe it's writing down your thoughts so they don't spin endlessly in your head. Maybe it's stepping outside for air to change your environment. Maybe it's creating a small daily routine to anchor yourself when everything feels chaotic. Small steps matter because distress thrives on helplessness, and every action, no matter how small, reminds you that you are not powerless. Another important piece is to stop carrying distress in silence, because silence is where it multiplies and festers. Talking to someone you trust, whether a friend, a family member, or a professional, doesn't always fix the problem instantly, but it lessens the weight on your chest. Sharing creates space for perspective. What feels unbearable alone sometimes looks different when spoken aloud. In addition to external support, self-support is essential. The human body and mind are not separate when it comes to distress. Poor sleep, skipped meals, lack of movement, and constant overexposure to negative information will all magnify distress. So, part of managing it is learning to treat the body as a foundation for healing. Consistent sleep, regular meals, exercise, and even something as simple as drinking enough water can create resilience against the crushing pressure of distress. And when the weight of distress feels unbearable, it is vital to remember that distress is not evidence that you are weak or hopeless. It is evidence that your mind and body are signaling for change, that something in your life needs attention, adjustment, or release. The signals are painful, but they are also messages guiding you to take steps toward peace. Instead of asking, why am I always like this? Ask, what is my distress trying to tell me? And in that shift of perspective, you stop being a victim of distress and start becoming its interpreter. Over time, with patience, awareness, and small but consistent steps, distress can be transformed from an endless cycle into a series of challenges you learn to face and overcome. And in that process, you don't just survive, you grow stronger, wiser, and more capable of creating a life where peace and purpose take the place of constant suffering. When distress becomes an everyday companion, the mind begins to confuse it with identity, whispering that maybe this is simply who you are, a stressed, broken, overwhelmed person who will never find peace. But this is one of the most dangerous lies distress tells, because distress is a state, not a definition. No one is born to live permanently in distress, and no one is doomed to it forever. But when the pressure feels endless, the question becomes not, will I ever escape this, but how do I carry myself through it and shape my response so that the weight doesn't crush me completely. And the truth is, learning to live with distress is like learning to walk through fire without letting it consume you. It's about building internal tools, mental frameworks, and small external habits that gradually change how you interact with pain. One of the first tools is learning to slow the storm inside your head, because when you are always in distress, your thoughts spiral like wildfire. What if this happens? What if I fail? What if nothing ever changes? These spirals create exhaustion before any real action even begins. To interrupt them, grounding techniques become essential: breathing exercises, mindfulness, or even something as simple as focusing on 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. This kind of grounding pulls you out of the endless what-if cycle and back into the present moment. And distress loses part of its grip because distress feeds on mental chaos. Alongside grounding, you also need to learn the art of reframing, which does not mean pretending everything is fine, but rather challenging the automatic negative thoughts that distress creates. For example, instead of letting the thought "I will never get through this" dominate, you can reframe it into "I don't know how yet, but I can take the next step." Reframing gives you back agency, and every small moment of agency matters when distress feels like drowning. Another tool is to recognize patterns in your triggers. Do certain people, environments, or situations worsen your distress? If so, then reducing exposure to those triggers slightly creates breathing room. Sometimes distress grows because people keep forcing themselves to stay in environments that drain them, whether it's toxic relationships, unhealthy workplaces, or constant digital overstimulation. You can't always walk away immediately, but awareness of triggers gives you the power to build protective boundaries. And then comes the question of meaning, because one of the deepest reasons distress lingers is the feeling that life has no purpose, that you are just moving through empty motions with no destination. To counter that, you must slowly build small purposes, things that give you reason to get up in the morning, whether it's a project, a skill, an act of service, or even something creative that expresses what words cannot. Distress feeds on emptiness, and purpose, even a small one, creates direction. Along with purpose, there is the practice of acceptance. Acceptance is not giving up, but rather facing reality without constant resistance. For example, if you are always in distress about being different from others, acceptance means saying, "Yes, I am different, and that's okay," instead of spending endless energy wishing to be someone else. Acceptance does not erase distress instantly, but it transforms the energy wasted on fighting reality into energy used for building peace. And throughout this process, patience is everything. Distress often pushes you to demand instant relief, but the truth is, just as distress built up over years, relief takes time to grow. You may not notice the progress day by day, but when you look back after months of small, consistent efforts, breathing, grounding, reframing boundaries, purpose, you will see that the distress that once consumed you has begun to loosen. It was good making this video, and thank you guys for watching this video. Follow me on Instagram and TikTok. Please help me build this channel and this good community on YouTube. I love guys who are subscribing and watching my videos daily, and I will always love you guys. This month, I will post daily, and I hope you guys enjoy them. Until the next one, peace and love.